Ryan Winters, having been duly sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth relating to said matter, was examined and testified as follows. Direct examination. State your name and spell it for the record, please. Ryan Winters, W-I-N-T-E-R-S. Is your middle name Joseph? First name is Joseph. I go by Ryan Winters. All my legal documents are Ryan. I'm Andy Baldwin. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you. Name sounds familiar. Have we? We may have run into each other at some point in time. I've been doing this a long time. How long have you been doing this? Year 21. Where are you from? Originally, or do you mean work-related? Like high school? Sullivan High School. Oh, okay. You know Sullivan? Yeah. Is that in Vigo? Sullivan County? Yeah, south of Vigo. Yeah, it's about 20 minutes south of Terre Haute. I had a weirdo case out there in Sullivan. That's the county seat is... What's the county seat of Sullivan? Sullivan. It is Sullivan? I had a weirdo child molest case there many years ago. Is that where you're out of? I'm in Putnamville, so Sullivan County is in the Putnamville district. Just give me a little bit of your background. You're in year 21. Where did you go to college, if you went to college and all that good stuff? I went to Sullivan High School and I graduated in '97. Went to ISU that same time frame. 4 years at ISU. Worked at Jubal School for Boys. Went to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy in October of 2002. Was appointed as an Indiana State Police probationary trooper in April of 2003. Was assigned to the Lafayette District in 2003. And I worked interdiction in Lafayette until, I would say during the time of this case, 2017, and transferred down to Putnamville District to work interdiction on 70. I went down there August of 2017, I believe, maybe. And I went to investigations in the fall of 2018 as a temporary duty assignment. I think I read when I was doing background on you, you've gotten some awards. Did you get an award? Yeah. What was that? I've gotten a couple of awards for Trooper of the District. I've gotten an award for the Regional Trooper of the United States. And then Glock gave me an award. I got the Gold Star Award from the State Police. There's a handful of awards through there. You're very humble about that. And what is it you're doing now exactly? Area 5 Field Investigations, which is essentially detective. I'm assigned to the Putnamville District. I take cases all over. What kind of cases are you working on? Everything. Murder? Yeah, some murder cases. Officer-involved shooting cases. A lot of child molestation cases. A lot of fraud cases. Theft cases. Deception cases. Any sex offense cases? A lot of them. By chance, are you working on the Greg Ferenczi case? No, not in Putnamville. That was out in Terre Haute, wasn't it? That's in Terre Haute. What was that? Last year? The year before? I don't know what agency worked that. I wasn't a part of it, though. How, if at all, did you get involved in the Delphi murder case? I was on light duty in preparation for going on medical leave, and I was assigned to what we called day shift post command. And so I fielded a lot of incoming calls. Incoming persons walk into the post in terms of the Delphi case. I always forget to ask this question. What, if anything, did you do today to prepare? I reviewed the supplements, and I tried to review the attachments, and some of them wouldn't open up. I don't know if it's because the internet is very slow. My air card at my residence is slow. The internet here is slow, so I reviewed the LL, or L2 supplements. When did you do that, those reviews? I did that yesterday, and I also did this morning. Have you talked to anybody other than the prosecutor about the deposition? I let my investigative squad sergeant know that I had testimony outside of district. I contacted First Sergeant Jerry Holman, who's the DIC agent in District L4 in Lafayette, last night to say, hey, I'm having some problems with access being denied to certain supplements. And he reached out to ISL investigative squad leader Stephen Buckley. Buckley sent me a text saying my access had been granted, allowed me to access some of the stuff on the case. So that would be the extent of what I did and who I spoke to. Are you aware of any types of questions we might be asking you, based upon any of these conversations? No. I didn't talk to anybody that's been deposed or know anybody. Did you do anything beyond what you described earlier, like taking walk-ins to Delphi and kind of working the tip line? Yeah, I did. I went with another trooper, actually Troy Fisher. He's a detective. We interviewed a handful of people that I can't remember why we interviewed those people. It may have been a list somewhere that we went out with a list and interviewed some people at their doors. And since then, since this time frame, I've also taken some reports of a calls coming in that there's a person that looked like the subject on, I-70 or I-65, that I would go out and speak with. And also the Putnamville district. Well, all the districts in the state, but Putnamville would receive a follow-up with the person in that area. One of the detectives or myself would get one. And I had maybe 2 follow-ups in, I guess maybe 2018. Thank you for saying that, 'cause I was going to ask when. So when, approximately, did you arrive on the scene to kind of help out in the Delphi murder investigation? Approximately would you think, if the girls died on the 13th or the 14th? I never went to the scene. Oh, okay. I never went to the scene. But when did you arrive? It sounds like you arrived in Delphi to those little groups. The little places where people were coming in if they had tips. Most of mine was from the post. Most of the people were coming to the post or calling the post, and I was answering the phone at the Indiana State Police Post. So when you say you never came to the scene, did you ever even come to Delphi? I did. I mean, there's people we interviewed in Delphi, I believe, and I think I came in once. I can't remember where it's at. It was like a makeshift headquarters or a makeshift post or like a meeting area I came to once. So you think maybe you just came to Delphi the one time, or was it multiple times? I can't recall. I know for a fact I came once. That's when I met classmate Detective Troy Fisher. We met in Delphi, we had lunch, and that's when we're dispersed to go interview local folks. What were those interviews related to on that occasion? I don't know. I think there was a list of maybe follow-ups that had come in. I don't really recall where those came from or who even had the list. Now I think the light bulb just went off. So when you were talking about walk-ins, that wouldn't be walk-in to the post. The Indiana State Police Post Battleground, Tippecanoe County. I was the post commander there. Where was that again? It's in Tippecanoe County. Is it in Lafayette? It's essentially battleground. Battleground. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. It's the 170-mile marker on 65, at 43 and 65, the Indiana State Police Post Lafayette. It's by battleground. Were you getting more in-person tips of people walking in, or more phone tips, or more email tips? How would you classify all that? I didn't get any email tips that I recall. Most of them were people calling in. I'm curious as to how would a call about Delphi be routed to you? Was there some system in place? Delphi is in the Lafayette district. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I was envisioning maybe there was like a L800 number, and then it would just go to different people or something like that. That's not the way that it was? I believe there's a hotline set up by the FBI, but we received calls. So do you think those calls were coming in on your direct line? Yes. And how, if at all, were you trained to kind of decide which of the leads were of value and which were not of value? I documented everything. Did you get those types of leads that you knew immediately, this is of no value? They're talking about aliens and things like that? I got those calls and I documented every one that came in. What would you do if you received a lead that you thought, okay, this might be something? I know you document everything, but this one I need perhaps to go up the chain to see if this is worth pursuing immediately. Or more quickly, I'd reach out to Steve Buckley, the ISL, Jerry Holman, and if they were at the post, I'd talk directly. I may have heard Steve Buckley's name before, but who is he? He's the investigative squad leader. He's a sergeant. He'd be the second over Area 1 investigations for Lafayette District. He would be right below DIC, District Investigative Commander, First Sergeant Jerry Holman. So he's under... Buckley is under Holman? Yes, but he would be over the detectives at the Lafayette District Investigators. That's the way it was back in 2017? Yes. Is that the way it still is? I believe so, yeah. Were there any, as you sit there right now, are there any leads that you remember thinking, this one is a good lead, I need to do something about this? There's several leads that stand out. Can you tell me about some of those? One call. A gentleman called from Arizona, and he said that Arizona was having problems with abductions by illegal aliens. which is kind of a known fact, or known at that time, that Phoenix, Arizona had a lot of people that were abducted into Mexico for trafficking and cartels and things of that nature. I listened to him talk. He became a little paranoid, and he wasn't talking about illegal aliens. He was talking about UFOs, and that he had actually seen people abducted by UFOs. So we were talking about completely different illegal aliens, and I documented that and forwarded it on. I think that, if I remember correctly, I think he hung up when I went to ask him for his name, 'cause he had made reference to the federal government can't be trusted, and like I'm an extension of the government, so he hung up. Another one was a female. I can't remember, it was either like Louisiana or somewhere near the Gulf Coast, and she said that she's a psychic is what she said, that she had had maybe a dream or premonition or a vision that the girls were killed by a creek, a pond, woods, a cornfield, or an open pasture. And in my mind I'm thinking the only thing she hasn't mentioned is a golf course, because that's really the terrain for Indiana. So her information was collected and documented. I had another call-in of I can't remember his name, but he said that the night before, the night of, he had a dream that the girls were killed using a knife in a wooded area. A premonition, which, is it someone? I don't know. So I took his information. I can't remember if I forwarded it on and how that worked, but it was documented. There's a supplement in there. There's another one there's a couple more. I'm drawing a blank. What about ones that were actually you felt were good leads that might be fruitful? In my mind, any lead that is a person that lives in this area would be a possible lead. I grant you the illegal alien, the UFOs, is not a lead that you can or anybody is going to follow up on. And the psychic, there's really nothing to follow up on there. That's kind of a person wanting to be a part of an investigation, get their foot in the door. So anything that would relate to the area would be in my mind. Anything outside of the psychic and the UFOs, I think would be a viable lead. Do you remember any leads concerning a suspect named Patrick Westfall? No. Do you remember any leads concerning a guy named Elvis Fields? No. Do you remember any leads concerning a guy named Johnny Messer? No. Do you remember any leads concerning a guy named Brad Holder? Yes. Okay, tell me about that. I only remember his name because I saw it in a supplement. Was it one lead or more than one lead on Brad Holder, if you remember? I only had information about Brad Holder from a caller. Do you remember the caller's name? It's in the reports. I think I might have it here. Yeah, Ryan Boucher. I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as AA and see if that's the report that you're referring to. Yes, I recognize this. Do you need this? I'm gonna ask some questions about it so I can kind of understand the verbiage and some stuff. At the very top, it says ORI INISP 1400. What is that, if you know? I mean, you may not even know. Yeah, that's our ORI. That's the assigned number for every law enforcement agency has. Is this related to your post? INISP 1400 is specifically assigned to the Indianapolis State Police Lafayette District. The I is Indiana, ISP is the Indiana State Police, and L4 is the destination for the Lafayette State Police Post. And then when it says Carroll County and venue is Delphi, I guess you cover a lot of ground there, I'm guessing. So that could be a different county. It could be Tippecanoe County, for example. Is that right? Carroll County would be the location of report number L7 ISP C Charles 001748-L. Okay, I guess I shouldn't just presume things. Is the county and the venue, is that where the crime occurred, or is that where the report is going to be sent? That's where the investigation was initiated. Okay. And then when it says report date and time, what does that mean? Report date and time would be the time that my report was generated. So I generated this narrative on March 28, 2017 at 12:13 hours. What about the February 4th? What does that mean? February 4th, 2017, 1300 hours would be the time that the incident report number L7 ISP C Charles 001748-L was pulled. Is that this report that I just gave you as AA? Exhibit A, yes sir. This report number is L7 SPC 001748-L. Is that right? Yes. I know these sound like dumb questions, but I don't understand the verbiage, so I wanted to make sure. So if I were to ask to pull up L7SPC001748-L, this would be what I would get, is that right? No. Glad I asked that. What would I get? You would get, if you plugged that report number into the RMS system, you would get, gosh, I can't remember, probably 3 or 4 or 5, I guess, extended reports for that number. And then each extended report would have, you know, several hundred, if not more, supplements in each report number. But would all of those supplemental reports have something to do with this case? Or would it be linked to the L7 ISPC Charles 01748. All the case would be affiliated with that. Okay, but each supplement may be under a different extension of that case because of the magnitude of it, because of the size of it. So I think that there's also L7 ISPC Charles 001748-2, which tells you that there's an extension on the case because of the data. I wish I was smarter, because I'm sorry, I have to ask this. So would all of those other documents that you said, if I plugged that in, would they be related to the Ryan Boucher call or to the Delphi murder case? The Delphi murder case. Okay, now I understand. How would you find this particular report? Does it have an assigned number to it? Yes. What is that? Supplemental report L69. Where is that located? Bottom right. Okay. All right, thank you. That will help. Can you tell from this report when you were in communication with Ryan Boucher? Yes. Where is that and when was it? April 12, 2017 at approximately 12:30 hours. From the narrative? That's the opening line of the narrative. Okay, so there's not another place. Something doesn't just automatically populate on the computer when you type in. It's from the narrative. Is that right? I'm not sure I understand the question. That's a bad question. I thought maybe there would be something in the body that would show when he called or something, but it's just from the narrative? Yes, the narrative. Let me go back to the top here. So when we say, address 5858 West County Road 300 North, is that the crime scene address? I don't know for sure. I would have to say yes, but I don't know for sure, because it says incident location. I know these are dumb questions, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going down the wrong rabbit hole, which often happens. So basically, do you fill out the top part of that? What do you fill out? That's another way to ask it. Whenever I generate a supplement, the computer generates a date and time. The information that you see below, not for public release, is not generated by me. Oh, okay. Down through at least the narrative, a lot of this stuff is auto-populated. You asked me specifically what things I populated. Like Bradley Holder. How would Bradley Holder's name there under other contact person or incident people? How would his name have appeared on this document? There's one of two ways. I don't remember specifically which way it was added, but it would have been added by me. Okay, and how would you have gotten the information concerning like his date of birth and all of that? I don't recall specifically. What would be a common way to do that? B&B, something like that. Yeah, B&B. When it says under not for public release, it says supplements approved report. Do you know what that means? I don't know. I know that when I generate a supplement, I get a confirmation that the report's been approved. I actually never looked at this portion of the lead sheet. I would say that means that my report has been approved. So looking at this document and reading it, I'm going to go on to the second page. I'll read the paragraph, then I'm going to ask you about it. Boucher verbally identified himself by telephone and upon request scanned and forwarded me a copy of his Georgia driver's license. Holder provided pictures of Holder's media accounts depicting tree limbs on the ground, displaying runes, consistent with the Odin belief system. I want to talk about that paragraph. What prompted you to seek his driver's license? Because he was identifying himself by phone. Did you do that with all out-of-state folks? I don't know about out-of-state. Yeah, I would request some form of information to identify who they were. The lady who said she was a psychic, her information was documented. The person who hung up in terms of the UFOs, there was nothing on him. But I always try to obtain some type of ID. What's the reason behind that? Because every call-in has a potential application to the case or follow-up to the case. And if this case is going to be investigated, we need to make sure we have information on that person that gave the tip. Continuing on with that paragraph I just read, Holder provided pictures from Holder's media accounts depicting tree limbs on the ground, displaying runes consistent with the Odin belief system. How did he provide those photos, pictures? I know he didn't hand them to you. I can't remember if he emailed them to me or if he emailed them to Pam Guy. I can't remember how they came in. To who? Pam Guy was our Area 1 investigation secretary. And I don't remember which way, if he emailed me or emailed her. Is that G-A-U-G-H? G-U-Y, Pam Guy. Guy. Okay, I'm sorry, Guy. Pam Guy. If Pam Guy would have received those, would she have forwarded those to you or printed them off and handed them to you? She would have made a copy for me or showed me or given me whatever she printed out, and then she would attach them as attachment into RMS. So one of those two ways, it was either emailed directly to you. Would you have given Boucher your email address? Yes, or hers, whichever one, whichever it was. Like, do you remember actually receiving this phone call as you sit there? As I read the narrative last night, yes, looks like it was in the afternoon. Do you know where were you in your office or were you? I had been in the radio room at the Lafayette State Police Post. That's where kind of my general area of assignment while I was on temporary duty status going into medical leave. What did you know about the crime scene before you started taking tip leads? I don't recall specifically. I was briefed by, I believe, Lieutenant McKee. I can't remember if I worked that day or that next day. I don't remember. I was on and off a lot during this time frame. But I remember being briefed by someone. I don't know if it was First Sergeant, Lieutenant Tom McKee, or a detective. I don't remember specifically, but I was briefed by somebody. And the reason I'm asking that, because we'll be talking about the next paragraph where you say, this rune symbol on the hand matched the sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. Those were your words in that next paragraph, the very last sentence? I'm not following you. Which line are you on? I'm sorry, the paragraph that starts, the provided media pictures. The very last sentence says, this rune symbol on the hand, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, match the sticks placed on the victims in the Delphi investigation. Would those be your words? Yes, and the reason I'm asking that is, it tells me or informs me that you must have known something about the crime scene. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how did you know the crime scene? I had seen pictures of the crime scene at some point. And was that everybody that was taking tips? Was that something that they would have given a primer on the crime scene, if you know? I don't know. And you don't know who gave you the crime scene photos to look at? Yeah, I don't recall specifically, but I remember seeing a handful of pictures. Now, would you have had those photos with you, or at least access to them, as you were taking these tips in? I don't recall if I did or not. Well, let's talk about that next paragraph. Actually, I want to go back before we move on. It says, Holder provided pictures from Holder's media accounts depicting tree limbs on the ground displaying runes consistent with the Odin belief system. When you wrote that into your report, did you know at that point what runes were or what Odin was? I'd never heard of it. So that was the first time you had heard of Odin? Yes. And so those words presumably came from Ryan Boucher then? Yeah. The information I'm putting in this report is from him. These are the things that he is saying and the things that he is reporting that he has seen. So then I'll go to the next paragraph. The provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. I'm going to hand you, do you remember as you sit there what that looks like? What that image looked like? No, I don't. I'm going to see if this is what's marked as F previously. No hard sticker on that. Just look at that for a second. Is that the image that Ryan Boucher sent you? No, I don't believe so. I don't know. I don't recognize this. I do remember that there was a picture involving two girls with limbs and sticks over them. I don't remember. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. Thank you. So what I just showed you, which is Exhibit F from a previous deposition, you've not seen that before? I don't know if I have or not. I don't know if I have or not. I'm going to read this again and then ask you a question. This is off of the fourth paragraph on the second page. The provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. I take from that you actually saw these pictures of unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. Would you have seen the pictures since you described it there? That's not a very good question. Let me see if I can say this better. You write in your report, the provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. That's your words, correct? Yes. And what I take from that is that you actually looked at these pictures that show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. Is that a fair thing for me to think? Say that one more time. That you actually saw this picture and then wrote what you saw on the picture in that sentence. Yes, I saw a picture. You don't believe it was that photo? I don't know. It's been so long, I don't remember if that's the picture or not. I know you brought your computer here. Would you be able to pull up the picture? I tried. I was not able to access those attachments. Those attachments would be under Pam Guy. And we're going to get to that. I'll get to that. Compared them to the pictures that showed unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their body. It would suggest that. I don't recall specifically. Okay, is it fair to say you might have had access to the crime scene photos if you wanted access to them to compare them to this photo of the unknown young girls? I would say yes. And then, a social media picture provided by Boucher matched a symbol on a hand believed to be holders. Do you remember that photo? I don't. Okay, I'm going to hand you what's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit 4 on a hard sticker, if it matters, from a previous deposition. And review that for a second. And when you're ready, let me know. You ready? Yes. So now that you're looking at what was marked previously as Exhibit 4, does that refresh your memory? Is that what you remember? I don't remember that. You just don't know if that's what you're looking at? Looking at that, I'm going to reread what you wrote. A social media picture provided by Boucher matches a symbol on a hand believed to be holders. This rune symbol on the hand matched the sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. Were those your words that I just read? The runes would have been his words, would have been Ryan Joseph Boucher's words, but I typed that. But Ryan Boucher, to your knowledge, did not have access to the crime scene photos. No, if I remember correctly, I Googled this as we were talking. I was Googling all information he was giving me on Google as we were talking. Googling like, what runes are, what runes were, what Odinism is. I think I was even trying to get on maybe a Facebook account for Holder. Okay, I do remember now, when he called in, I was Googling that. There was a whole lot of pictures on the internet that were consistent with the things we're talking about here. So I don't know if this was a picture he sent me or a picture that was on the internet. I don't recall specifically. Okay, and we'll get to that in a second. There's stuff at the bottom I'm going to be talking about. Before I move on, where it says, this rune symbol on the hand matched the sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. That was an opinion that you placed into this document, is that correct? Yes, and we know that it is because Ryan Boucher did not have access to the crime scene photos. True, right? Do you still have the same opinion today as you look at the side-by-side photo of the page that the rune on that? What I would represent is a hand, as you said here, matched the sticks placed on the victim. I'm sure there's more than one picture of the victims with sticks on them. I don't know if this was the one that I was referring to or not. Okay, let's just take out of the equation whether or not you looked at it before or not. Let's just say looking at it, as you're looking at it, do you think that those side-by-sides resemble one another? No, they don't? No, but there is a photo out there apparently that was provided to you by Ryan Boucher where you did believe that the symbol on the hand of this media, from Holder's Media, matched the sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. I may have misspoken here. What I do remember is that the pictures I've seen on the internet of young girls that had limbs laying across them were consistent with the victims in this case having limbs laying across them. I don't know if I misspoke or why I said that, but in terms of the symbol, the tattoo, and the limbs, I think we're talking about two different things here. Okay, I appreciate that. Let me just make sure that we're clear on the record later on. I'm gonna quote the last sentence from the 4th paragraph on the 2nd page. This rune symbol on the hand matched the sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. Those are your words, correct? Yes. And therefore, is it fair for me to presume that when you get a chance to look into whatever it is that you saved, that there should be a media photo of a symbol on a hand that matches sticks that were placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation? I don't know. I mean, if you marked it down here, then I would presume this rune symbol on the hand that matches the sticks placed on the victims. Yeah, the victims had sticks across their bodies, as we talked about in H. And the pictures in Holder's Facebook had girls with sticks laying across them. And the symbol on his hand is consistent with an Odinism rune. It says it's consistent with sticks placed on the victim in the Delphi investigation. I don't know. Well, I think it's a bit unfair because you don't have these photos, access to them. So we might have to reconvene at a different point, I guess, because I think I'll just tell you what I think, and I could be wrong. I think that that is a rune image on a hand, and I think that you thought at that time that that matched that on that side by side. But if I had to guess, you don't think that way now, but you did then. That's what I think. But I could be wrong, because that's the only hand rune that we have in Discovery. Hand rune from what? From Brad Holder's What Ryan Provided? Right. Well, what Ryan provided, which was also on Brad Holder's Facebook page. Okay, because I met with Ryan down in Georgia, and this is what he said he gave to you. You actually went to Georgia and talked to Ryan? I sure did, yeah, I did. So he said that that's one of the images that he gave you was that. Do you have another image? Yeah, the one that you looked at earlier of the girl in the purple dress. The fake, I don't know if it's fake. That one there. This one? Yeah. He believes that's the other one of the others that he gave you. But it could be another. There could be others because he also said that he gave you a lot of stuff. So let's just venture into that territory. Okay, well, let's go to the next paragraph. A review of the pictures believed to be that of Holder show Holder displaying handguns and what appear to be homemade knives. Holder had a military background. Do you know if that sentence there in the 5th paragraph of page 2 is from What Are You Talking About, what Ryan Boucher sent you? Or are you talking about what you saw independently on the internet from looking at Brad Holder's Facebook page? I don't recall specifically. Okay, I remember seeing knives and I remember seeing guns. And I don't know how I came to the landing point of Holder had a military background, unless there was something in the pictures that had military attire. I don't know if I would have done any search on that or not. When it says, and when you say you don't know if you had done a search or not, I mean earlier you said that you thought, I hope you don't think I'm coming at you hard. I'm not at all. I'm just trying to figure stuff out. So you might have been on Facebook while Boucher was talking to you trying to figure stuff out? I was definitely Googling things as he was talking to me, sure. And I was looking up images as he was talking to me. I had no idea what Odinism was or any of the things that he was talking about. So I was Googling these things as he's talking to me. And maybe Brad Holder's Facebook page? Maybe. It's possible. I don't know if I had Facebook in that time frame or not. This information was forwarded directly to Lieutenant McKee. I think you said it was Holman and then McKee and then you? No, there's 2 different areas there. Again, I was on light duty going into medical leave. I was sitting as a post commander. Sitting as a post commander, that's the enforcement side. Lieutenant Tom McKee was the actual post commander. So my responsibility as a post commander was when somebody called the state police to take calls and forward anything that needs to be forwarded. Direct details, personnel and manpower. And then report those things to the enforcement district commander, which is Lieutenant Tom McKee. First Sergeant Jerry Holman and investigative squad leader Steve Buckley are in investigations. Even though we're in the same building, they're in the back. That helps me understand a little bit. When you forwarded this, it says, this information was forwarded directly to Lieutenant McKee. What information would that have been? It could have been this report. Okay, And would that have included all the images that you received from Ryan Boucher as well? I don't know if they had been received yet or not, but yes. Okay. Well, I mean you're talking about them as if you had seen them before that. Yeah, so I would presume. Yeah, I'm guessing yes, he would have saw everything. I wasn't sure if I was leaving, what my status was, and I wanted to make sure I was reporting everything for follow-up. So you believe Lieutenant McKee would have had everything? All these images that Ryan Boucher sent you, along with the report that you prepared? He may not have had the finalized report, because it says on here, approved report. So that would have been approved at a different point. But he would have had the information conveyed to him, to his office. What about the images? Yeah, I would say yes, but I don't recall specifically. I don't know. Would every lead that you received, would you forward the lead directly to Lieutenant McKee? Or would they only be what you might label as interesting or good leads? What was the date on this? April 12th? When did I generate this report? March 28th. I would say that March 28th was about my time to walk out the back door. Okay, so any calls I would have gotten, I would have let him know. There's calls coming in a lot, and people would go to him and say, this person called, this person called, this person called, this person called, and that would have been no different from me. So March 28th is the date. This is where I'm confused. March 28th is the report time, but then April 12th is when you receive the phone call. So what is the March 28th date at the top of page 1? That's a good point. Unless March 28th would have been the point that 17 ISPC Charles 001748 went to the dash, and maybe that's what that is. I don't know. Who would be a good person to figure that out, if you know? Investigative Squad Leader, or Jerry Holman, or Steve Buckley. The next, I'm back on page 2. I spoke with Sergeant Holman on April 12, 2017. Sergeant Holman. What's the F stand for there? First Sergeant. With First Sergeant Holman on April 12, 2017. First Sergeant Holman advised that the FBI had interviewed Holder shortly at the beginning of the investigation. Do you remember that conversation with First Sergeant Holman about the Ryan Boucher call? Yes, I believe that. I can't remember if he came in the radio room or he was in the back hallway, but I remember pointing out the information to him. Would that have included pointing out the information, including the images that Ryan Boucher had sent to you? I don't recall. So that's the same day that, according to your narrative, that Ryan Boucher called and talked to you and sent these images to you, was also the same day that you talked to First Sergeant Holman about the Ryan Boucher phone call. Is that correct? Yes. Just tell me anything you can remember about your conversation with First Sergeant Holman after you had talked to Ryan Boucher about the Ryan Boucher phone call. I feel like I was packing my stuff up and leaving when he came in the back door. I told him that a person had called in with this information. I can't remember what it was, but Jerry Holman told me that they had already interviewed, or that they looked into this Odinism, or they had talked to, I can't think of his name, Holder. Either they had talked to him or they were aware about the Odinism. The FBI had already followed up on what I had generated. Was it your belief that Holder had already been eliminated as a suspect at that time when you talked to Holman? Oh, I had no idea. I don't know. Here's the way I'm thinking. I'm reading that paragraph that starts with the words, "The provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies." That entire paragraph, I'm just imagining that you have compared. Obviously, you had compared those photos to the crime scene photos, and that the symbols on the hand, according to your report here, match the sticks placed on the victim of the Delphi investigation. And you're like, wow, this could be a big deal. This could be a big deal, because this is matching. Some of this matches the crime scene that nobody knows about. I'd better do something about this. I'd better talk to Holman, and I'd better make sure that this gets some legs before I go on leave. Was that your thought process at the time? Like I said earlier, I think from my knowledge I wasn't a part of the investigation. I was aside, that to my knowledge, that was the first time that I had heard that there was a motive, and even people from the area may have known the victims, which is what he put out here. And of course, whenever you're conducting an investigation, those are the things you're looking for. And so you have a person, according to Ryan Boucher, who may know the victims. According to Ryan Boucher, there's a person's name who lives in the immediate area that may have direct ties with the victim. So yeah, that was, and knew about and had posted stuff on his Facebook page that matched the crime scene. That's also part of your analysis, I would presume? I think that he had a pagan belief that is always concerning. Yeah, and a weirdo. I would label that as a weirdo photo. If that's what you ended up pulling up later on when you're able to have access to it, the girl in the purple dress, remember I was getting my stuff. I can't remember if he walked in the radio room or the hallway or how that worked out, but I remember telling him about a call that just came in, and I think during that time from Delphi that anyone was getting calls, and everyone was, just doing everything they could to complete as much information as you can and pass it on. Everyone was just passing on information, even the ones that were crazy about the UFOs, even things that were, somebody had a similarity to whatever. Everyone was just putting it out there for everyone to know. Suffice it to say, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But you got off the phone with Ryan Boucher after having talked to him and reviewed the images that he had sent you, thinking this could be a big deal. Is that fair to say? As a potential lead, a follow-up lead. So the answer is yes, that you did think, yeah, this needs to be followed up on, as you said earlier. I don't know if big deal would be the word, but yeah, it's something that needs to be followed up on. There's a lot of things in this career that people think is a big deal, and you get to the point where, it's not a big deal until you get to, people are like, oh, it's a big deal, and once you start picking it apart, it's not a big deal. So in terms of this being, your words, big deal, I don't know if I'd say big deal, but there's information that needed to be followed up on. That's the key to investigation is following up. And then the next thing, request that Brad W. Holder be re-interviewed. Is that your request, or was that somebody else's request? Yeah. What we generally do is supplements that are, how do I explain this? As a road trooper, strike that. As we close out a supplement and it's getting reviewed. So up here when you look at this, not for public release approved report, 1, we talked about this earlier. An approved report. Somebody will approve this report at that time frame because of the magnitude of this case. I don't know who was approving those reports, but kind of a trend that, I came from a different generation from the guys now, but you would put into your narrative, example, request detective follow-up on this, request that this be forwarded to Indianapolis, request that this be forwarded to wherever. In this particular case, because I had no knowledge of whether or not he was interviewed other than the FBI had looked into it, I requested that he be re-interviewed just because I had no idea what it was. I wanted to close out my supplement to say, hey, I don't know where this is, but if this person has or has not been interviewed or needs to be re-interviewed, then I'm making that request. Because Ryan Winters is not following up this case, because Ryan Winters is going out the back door. Well, it sounds like Holman had already told you that the FBI had interviewed him, so is it fair to say you felt that based upon what Ryan Boucher had sent you and the information that Ryan Boucher had given you, that it was worth Brad Holder being re-interviewed? Yes, I had no idea who the FBI folks were. I don't know their capabilities or even what level they put in. There's different levels of interview, whether it's a soft interview, a hard interview, and I had no idea whether they had any of this. You can assume that they do because they're FBI, but we've made that assumption before with other people, and it's not correct. So yes, I wanted to make sure all the stuff I captured up here, maybe he should be re-interviewed if he wasn't interviewed already, or if he was interviewed, to what extent was he interviewed? Would you have expected after you requested that Brad Holder be re-interviewed that he would be re-interviewed? It's a request. Yeah, I'm sure they would. But there have been cases in my career where you've asked, as a road trooper, asked for a detective to take the case, and they don't take the case. So there's a lot of requests you can make, but you're still not an important person. That's all the questions I have. Nothing. I don't have anything. By the way, would you please, you don't have to, but we really need to figure out what those images were. And I know maybe if you could get to a better internet place, if you could get those and forward those to Nick, that would be terrific. I forwarded all those pictures on that day in that investigation when I was leaving to Pam Guy. I can only assume that there would be something on here for Pam Guy that would have maybe her pictures, that she put them in a file or something. I don't know. You said she's still working at the... No, she retired 5 years ago. She's older. I don't want to throw an age out there on the record. When you say, help me when you say you would have forwarded them to her, would it have been like an ISP email or a personal email? What an attachment is I don't have an example here. If I get consent to search, I get that consent to search, and I put it in her folder on her cabinet or her drawer. And it has a case number at the top of it. And so she gets that attachment, she looks at it, sees the case number, and she knows this is an attachment. So she has a little box inside of her desk that we would put supplements or, attachments in her drawer. So I would have printed these off, and I would put them. Oh, you would have given her actual hard copies? She would have had hard copies. The ones I opened, I could not see any. I did not have access to the attachments in her. But if you look, my report has her name affiliated with them. If when she retired, would her stuff that she would input somewhere, would that go to somebody else, or would it just be out there somewhere? Yeah, I have no idea. Thank you. Do you want to review and sign? What's that? Do you want to review your words to see if they're typed out accurately? You mean like a certified copy? Yes, having been duly sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth relating to said matter, was examined and testified as follows. Direct examination questions by Mr. Rozzi. Okay, we're on the record State of Indiana versus Richard Allen, OBC 012210 MR1. Present are myself, Defense Attorney Baldwin, Prosecutor Macleod, and I, otherwise known as Mr. Rozzi. Is that right? That's correct, sir. Okay. If I could call you that. Please do. All right. Have you ever taken a deposition before? I have. And just a couple of things, just reminders if nothing else. First and foremost, just try to answer audibly, yes, no, instead of uh-huhs and uh-uhs. That would be helpful. And if I have to redirect you, don't take that offensively, okay? Not at all, sir. All right. Second, there is water. You have one. And there's a restroom right behind us. If you need to stop for any reason, or you have any other questions, just feel free to speak freely. Okay? Thank you. All right. Go ahead and tell us your full name. My name is Mr. Rozzi. And where do you work? With the Indiana State Police. How many years have you been employed with the State Police? 37. And in what capacity are you currently employed? My current rank is a Master Trooper Detective. My day-to-day assignment is as a Field Intelligence Officer. What's that mean? It means that I am responsible for gathering, cultivating, and signing up new informants. Confidential human sources. I also am a liaison officer that works with individual and smaller agencies that may not have the technical capabilities that our department has. So I help them in their interface with the Fusion Center to be able to give them some more technical expertise and get them in touch with some experts in an individual field in order to hopefully use technology or other connections to advance their cases. Okay? So let's start with the first one, just so I understand this. When you say informants, are you mostly talking about things involving the drug trade? Not necessarily. Okay, so you work with informants of all types? Yes, sir. Give me some other examples, just so I have some context. Patriot groups that might be outside the realm of legal activities, biker gangs, things like that. There has to be a criminal nexus of some type before we can gather intelligence on an individual or group. But we don't just stick to drug enforcement, as would be the traditional thought. Okay, so then the second bucket that you referenced, so to speak, was that you basically deal with technology to the extent that you're trying to marry what's going on in the investigations with people in your offices that are handling computers and things of that nature, so that these things are efficient and done right. That's a good way to put it, yes, especially with smaller departments who don't always have those types of experiences or assets. Okay, just tell me, if you could, Maybe this is a broad question, but in terms of the hierarchy of your circumstances, the hierarchy of command in the state police, where are you on that whole? Just as a master trooper. Okay. Do you have any specific areas of expertise other than working with informants and handling or kind of dealing with this technical side that we just talked about? My specialties. For years, I was the lead instructor at the Law Enforcement Academy for Indiana State Police recruits on the defensive tactics or the hand-to-hand techniques. All right. Anything else? That's it. Do you follow in any, I'll say, annual or routine training with regard to anything else other than those three things? Absolutely. What? What are kind of the high points? We have a yearly refresher that deals with both current case law, changes in the law that may have happened, new statutes that have come out. Indiana statute requires us to have 24 hours of training for law enforcement. Typically, on a given year, I'll have anywhere from 36 to 48 hours in everything from search and seizure to, again, the new laws that have come out. Okay? So it's just kind of basic police training that everybody gets. Yes. Refresher courses? Yes, sir. All right. What did you do in preparation for this deposition? I looked through my emails to see what I had emailed other department members with. I talked to Detective Roland Purdy and Detective Holman. And with respect, we'll take these one at a time. With respect to the emails, you don't have any documents with you today. What did you find? I found that back in, I believe it was February of 22, was my last email to Roland. My email doesn't go back any farther than that I could research. But it was an email that I had sent to him and asked him a question back and forth about this case. Okay? So let's just, for the sake of discussion today, let's just assume I haven't seen any materials generated by you. So I might ask you a few questions about that, okay? Yes, sir. Is that an email that's pretty easy to dig up and get to Mr. McClelland so that he can get it to me? It certainly would be. Is that the only email that you found with regard to your involvement in this particular case is the one? I think there's one follow-up email, but it's on that same string, okay? So basically you found essentially two emails or one email in two parts. And that's the entirety of the emails that you would have generated in this investigation? Those are all that I could find. I don't recall any prior to that, okay? And the only person that you communicated with by email regarding this investigation was Officer Purdy? I believe so. That's the only one that I have record of. I don't believe I ever communicated with Detective Holman by email, sir. Okay? And you also said that you spoke with Officer Purdy. When did you speak with Officer Purdy? I've spoken with him several times. Well, regarding this deposition, Monday, what was the nature of that conversation? We simply asked about, or I asked, him about what kind of things were discussed. He filled me in kind of the type of questions that you'd asked, which are very similar to what you're asking me right now. Okay. Did you call him or did he call you? I called him. There was no answer. He called me back. Do you guys communicate routinely? Not routinely, because we're so far apart geographically in the state, but occasionally we meet on different details. An example would be 2 weeks ago, we both worked the state fair together. Oh, okay. Well, I guess you apparently knew that he was being deposed in this case. Yes. And that's why you reached out to him? That's correct. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how that happened. How the nexus occurred of you knew that he was coming today. I did. You knew that he was here last week? I knew that he came on Monday. Okay. And again, that's because we were at the state fair together. Okay. All right. And so did you guys talk about anything involving the Sons of Odin or any of the stuff about Odin? Very briefly, yes. What did you talk about? He said that he was asked about Odinism and a little bit about the figure that was drawn on the tree. All right. And you said that you also spoke with Trooper Holman, or I should say, well, Detective Holman. You're all troopers in a way to me. Sorry. Briefly, he's the one that notified me that I had a deposition. Okay, when did you talk to him? You can estimate. A week or so ago. What was the nature of that conversation? To tell me that I had a deposition. Did you talk about anything else? Very briefly about the case. He said he thought it would probably be about the Odinism aspect of it, but he had no further information on it. Did you ask him any questions about what aspect of that or anything like that? He indicated he didn't know, so no, we didn't pursue that, sir. Did he talk to you about any of the testimony or the statements or questions that were asked of him during his deposition? He did not. I don't know if he had had his deposition yet. Sir, any other information that you reviewed in preparation for the deposition today? I looked up the Fehu rune on Google. Could you spell that for me just so we all know what we're? F-E-H-U. Why did you look that up? Because that was the figure that I recalled being left on the tree that was really my only involvement in the case, was that it had shown up and there were questions about what it might mean. Okay, if it was in fact a Fehu rune, yeah. You said you looked it up on Google. Were you refreshing your recollection of that, or? Yes, I was refreshing my recollection, as well as the fact that runes are very much like the word too. Depending on how it's used and where it's looked up, there may be multiple meanings for one word. Correct, sir. What in your mind does Fehu mean? I guess you brought it up. I'm gonna ask. Fehu quite literally means cattle or livestock. It's very often interpreted as wealth or noble wealth. I've seen it referred to as that. Or for good luck, hoping for some financial gain. Okay. Did you speak with Sheriff Liggett regarding this investigation in the recent past? Never. Okay. What about former Sheriff Leesenby? I don't even know the gentleman. No, I haven't. Any other troopers? Winters? Murphy? Anybody of those? No, sir. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Any other materials that you reviewed other than the Google search that you mentioned? No, sir. Did you generate any reports or other documentation? Similar documentation in the course of your involvement in this case? No, sir. I haven't seen any. That's why I'm asking. No, sir. Okay. When was it that you got involved in this investigation? The crimes occurred in February of 17. Just to give you it would have been several months after that. That was pre-COVID. So we were down at the offices quite a bit, and I heard that there was possibly a Viking symbol or a Viking rune left on a tree. I had done some research on those, regarding an earlier event that we had gathered some intelligence on, so I had some working knowledge of those. So I reached out. Roland, I happened to know, was on the task force that was investigating, so I reached out to him and asked him about that. That was my first involvement. So you actually got word through coffee shop talk, more or less, my phrase, and then you actually reached out to some of the investigators in this case? That's correct. Sir, they didn't seek you out? They did not. I'm gonna ask you generally, this earlier event that you referenced, did it have anything at all to do with this case? Not that I know of. Okay, I can describe it to you. Yeah, would you just describe it to me? Okay, there was a group called the American Guard that was led by a gentleman named Brian James. Brian has a long history of, he was associated with the skinheads. He was associated with the Vinlanders, and then he formed the American Guard, all of which are extremely white supremacist based. Brian actually had a criminal history on some violence towards a colored gentleman in Indianapolis. I believe he did some jail time for that. That group, the American Guard, had been publicizing on social media that they were going to be security for a Second Amendment rally in Indianapolis. Well, it seemed a bit odd to us, and it was going to be on the grounds of the State House. So we took a little notice of that. They had publicized on an open-source social media where they were going to be meeting prior to the event, and that they were going to be marching to the State House. I showed up down there early to just march with the group, and there were several hundred people, not associated with Brian's group, but several hundred people total. The people who associated themselves with Brian James that day showed up with, most of them were carrying guns. Brian wasn't, because I believe he's a convicted felon, but most of them showed up with some type of weaponry, whether it be firearms, open display of knives, but several of them had wooden or metal shields. I mean big, like Captain America type shields, and when you looked at them, there were actually sheet metal screws protruding from the inside going out. So these shields were actually weapons. Okay, well, many of the shields, some were made of wood as well, and those concealed a baton inside them that could have been used as an impact weapon if wanted. Well, many of these shields had runes on them, and I didn't know what they meant, So I started looking into and did a little research to try to find out what some of those meant and what they might have meant. What was the timing of this? Do you generally know? This would have been probably 1617-ish, so it goes back a while. Do you know what time of year it was? Was it cold out? Was it warm out? Do you remember? I would say towards the fall. Okay, so that was my first introduction into deciphering, if you will, what these kind of meant or what they might have meant. You're talking about, you mentioned shields with batons. Are you talking about like Braveheart kind of stuff, kind of more? They were smaller. They were basically kind of medieval feel to it. I mean, that's what I'm envisioning. Very much so. They were maybe 3 feet by 2.5 feet with plumbing-type handles, and like I said, they were quite substantial. They would have taken a heavy blow. Okay, so then, when Trooper or Officer Purdy, the two of you communicated initially, what happened after that in terms of your involvement? He and I met so he could accurately show me what the figure on the tree looked like, and it reminded me of the rune Fehu. And so I looked that up and we spoke about that, and he wanted to know how that would have maybe tied into a crime scene. I didn't know. I still don't know how it ties in, because traditionally that's a rune of luck and wealth, so I don't know how it would have been construed to be in a crime scene. So you talked to him on the phone, or did you actually meet with him in person? We did both. We spoke on the phone, but it's hard to do a representation on a phone, and Roland and I are friends. We just met for breakfast. Okay, just the two of you? Actually, it was another gentleman with me who happened to be on my day off that day. Who happened to be what? There was another gentleman with me that day. Oh, like a friend or something? Yes. Okay, who was that? Brian Jenkins. Brian Jenkins. I thought you were going to say Brian James. You were going to kind of throw me off there for a minute. No. Although we've spoken many times, I wouldn't consider us good buddies. Where did you guys meet? A Cracker Barrel. Forgive me, I don't recall the location. I drove farther than he did. So then did you do or meet with any other law enforcement officials in the course of this investigation? Mr. Holman? Detective Holman. Tell me when that meeting occurred, if you could estimate. That would have probably been 18 or 19. It was pre-COVID, and it was very, very brief. We met on the north side of Indianapolis. What was the purpose of that meeting? I delivered something to him. When we were still downtown, we had a big printer that our section would occasionally print something off from, and he had it. He was on the north side of Indianapolis. I said, I'll drive it out to him. So I delivered that to him. Do you remember what you delivered to him? It was rolled up. I don't know, sir. Okay. So there was just some material that you guys had processed down at your office. Someone had, yes. I didn't do that. In a tube or something? It was rolled up. I don't remember it being in a tube. And you have no idea what it was? I don't. So it was just a rendezvous for a handoff of a tube or whatever. It was. Did you guys talk about this case at all? Yes, briefly. Okay, what did you talk about? He showed me a drawing of or a representation of where the sticks were laid over the girls' bodies when they were found, and asked if I saw anything regarding any runes or anything in there. I didn't. At least not of the runes that I know. Now, when we speak of runes, though, there are several different categories of them. They don't all look the same. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But that's okay. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you entirely. Go ahead. You're not. But I didn't recognize anything in the sticks. And again, it was a stick drawing of sticks. It was a stick drawing of sticks? Correct. Do you have that drawing? Or is this something he showed you? He showed me. I do not have a copy of it. So basically, forgive me for being a little bit more detailed, but that's why we're here. So somebody took a piece of paper and just drew with their own freehand some lines. Yes, sir. And you knew that it was representing sticks? Yes, sir. And so what else occurred during that conversation? That was the extent of the conversation. Okay. Where did this take place? It was on the north side of Indianapolis. He was in town for some training, but I was already downtown and leaving. That's why I just volunteered to drive it up for him. So basically, he just handed you a piece of paper with some lines on it, and you looked at that and said, it doesn't mean much to me. He told me what it was, but I looked at it. Yes, okay. I didn't see anything. So my understanding from speaking with other law enforcement officials in this case is that you are a follower of Sons of Odin, Or you subscribe to Odinism? I'm being a little bit insensitive here about, as a religion? Well, or as a spiritual belief. No, that's not true. That isn't true. Okay, that's one of the reasons why I got you in here, because we had kind of heard that, or, no, that isn't true. Okay, but I do have some knowledge of it, simply because I started again looking at it through the runes and things like that. And I did find it interesting. Okay, but you don't have any personal connection to this movement or belief system? No. Whatever phrase I use? No, sir. Cult, some people would call it that. You don't have any personal connection to that? I do not. Okay, we got that cleared up. Did you ever meet with anybody in this case? The phrase, unified command, has been kicked around a lot in this room in the last couple weeks. The group of leaders in this investigation. Did you ever meet with any of them regarding any of this? No, sir, I did not. And you never met with any suspects? I'm going to ask these questions just because I'm trying to make sure I rule everything out. Sure. You never met with anybody or did any further investigation because they said, hey, go out and talk to this person or that person? No, sir. Did you ever speak with anybody from Purdue University regarding runes or any of this other stuff? No, sir. Did you, when you were speaking with Trooper Purdy, or Trooper Holman for that matter, did either one of them show you any photos from the crime scene? Yes. Let me hand you what's been marked, previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit 1. Would you just take a look at that? We're gonna have to, the distance of this table. Do you recognize that photograph? Yes, sir, I do. Is that a photograph you've seen previously? I have seen this one, yes. Is that the one that Purdy offered up to you? I believe it is, sir. Yeah, it appears to be very similar to what I remember. Okay, and is that the photograph that you suggested is similar to the runes that you were looking up on Google? It is, sir. Okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page, what is it about that photograph that caught your attention? It could easily be mistaken for an F, but the fact that both of the horizontal bars point up are very indicative of the rune Fehu, which is often thought to represent cattle. And so in your mind, when you saw that, the angle of the two horizontal bars was kind of what caught your attention? That's correct, sir. Was that something that jumped out pretty quick without spending a lot of time with this? It was. Okay. And so in the context of, you can set it down if you want. That's fine. Just leave it there. Make sure everybody has access to it. So in the context of your looking at this, did you draw the conclusion that that appears to be something that was deliberately placed on the tree, rather than some random mark? It appears to have some. It appears to have been done accurately to make either an F or that Fehu rune. It doesn't appear particularly random, like somebody's wiped something off. You mentioned earlier that these runes can have different meanings, you know? And you used the word too as an example. Let's talk about that. Did you find information online that supported that idea? Or is that just a conclusion that you drew? May I ask you a question for clarification? Yeah, sure. I'm not positive what you're asking. I need to ask a better question, I think is what you're saying. Earlier, you mentioned that this system of runes can have different meanings. They may mean one thing to one person, I guess. Correct. And another thing to another person, right? Yes, sir. What led you to that conclusion? To a large degree, just the Google search. Several different websites that you go to. There used to be a really good one that I could not find. I don't know if it's since gone under, but that would discuss a lot of the different meanings. But very much like a diagnosis, sometimes people just can't agree on. So depending on which website you're on, you're going to get a little bit of variance. Most of them will agree with the cattle or mobile wealth, but a few of them will say, oh, well, in New Age whatever it might mean this, or it could be a gateway to that. It depends on how far you want to run down the rabbit hole and which interpretation you choose to believe. Okay, did you discover during the course of your studies, I'm gonna use that word loosely, with regard to this Odinism that there's kind of a legitimate side of this spiritual belief, and then there's kind of a, I'll call it kind of a good and evil side. There's a good side and there's kind of an evil side? I would say very much so, yes. And is it fair to, so there's people running around in society basically that believe in this? or that exercise or subscribe to this system of beliefs that are normal, law-abiding humans, right? I would believe so, yes. Are you confident that there's also people running around in this society that subscribe to this system of beliefs that are frankly evil or bad people, Brian James and his followers? Without making a moral-based judgment, there are some that believe in this system of, again, philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, that have tendencies that are outside the norm. Again, most of those revolve around the white supremacy movement. Definitely some very strong feelings by them. People that subscribe to violence, people that I would say would probably be quick to violence. Okay. Other than this circumstance with Brian James, I don't want to make him the center of attention today, but other than that, have you done any other investigations, maybe even after that, regarding this Odinism cult or group? We've seen some of the runes and things like that show up in some of the prisons, and I've been asked a couple of times about what that might mean by various tattoos or something on a letter. But as far as an investigation, no. What's your opinion on that, about the stuff being present in some of the prisons and what that might mean? Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. Let me withdraw the question. By the prisoners, or somebody showed you a photo or something? Correct. Of a prisoner who had, and asked me what this might represent. Okay, so these types of things are present, or there's some commonality with the prison systems. It is, and I don't know if you want to call it a Satru or Odinism. That seems to be one of the growing religions in some of the prisons. Amongst inmates we're talking about, right? That's correct. Okay, I want to make sure. I'm sorry, I didn't specify, but yes, not something that the staff members would be involved with? That's, on the staff members, I can't speak to that. Okay, well, what we're talking about is bad people that are locked up in prison who affiliate with these groups, probably for their own personal safety and other reasons, right? Whatever reason, but yes, they are affiliating with it. All right, let me show you what's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit T, and just ask you to take a look at that and tell me if you've ever seen that photograph. I have never seen this photograph before, sir. Do we agree that that's a T and that I made a mistake? It appears to be a T to me. Okay, you've never seen that photo? I have not, sir. Well, let me represent to you as an officer of the court, so to speak, that is a photo of one of the girls that was found dead in this case. Do you have any reason to disbelieve that? I do not, sir. Okay, directing your attention to, may I get my glasses out? Oh, yeah, sure. You probably should get your glasses out. All right, sir, your question? So let me direct your attention to, the body of the young woman there, and specifically the left side. Do you see all these sticks that are located there? I do. All right. And nobody's ever showed you those before? I have not seen this picture before. Do you agree with me that those sticks appear to have been placed there intentionally, just from kind of first glance at that photo? It would appear so. I mean, do you agree they didn't likely fall off a tree that way? I would say that's very unlikely. Okay, and do those sticks in any way mimic or look familiar in terms of the formation or the stick drawing that Officer Holman gave you when he met with you? Sir, I don't remember what it looked like accurately to be able to answer that. I'm sorry. Well, as you sit here today, is there anything about the formation of those sticks that might prompt or be related to any of the Odinistic information that you've gathered? May I have just a moment to study this? Yeah, sure. May I ask you a question? You sure can. Has this been cut or is that a break? Well, I think there's some consensus that it was cut at some point. Okay, I don't see anything that's indicative of anything that I know that would connect this to the runes or to the Odinistic religions. But it does appear, in answer to your earlier question, it looks like they were placed there intentionally. Okay, fair enough. All right, Anthony, let me hand you what I've marked as Defendants Number 1. I'm going to represent to you that I just got online and started looking up Odinism and runes and all that other stuff. And this is one of the drawings I generated. Does that look like the types of things that you would have found online when you were doing your research? Lots of pages like this with different? Yes and no. Okay, tell me why, and tell me why not. These are what I would believe to be bind runes, where they combined more than one for a specific purpose. Bind, B-I-N-D. They will bind one rune to another. In other words, let's say Fehu, for example, would be construed as mobile wealth. Well, they might want that in a business enterprise, so they might have another rune that would represent their business. They would combine those over the top of each other, or in some way to bind those together. So that's what these look like more than the standard runes. Okay, so maybe a little bit more sophisticated set of runes? I would say that these probably would be because these are for a specific reason. But they still look like runes to you, right? They are. I would say that, but may I give an example? Yeah, sure. Which one are you pointing to? The one that says safe travels. Sure. Yeah. If you take off the stick there, I recognize that as one that is, please forgive me, I don't remember the name of it, but it signifies traveling. So if you took off the stick on the left side of it, it looks like an R, right? Correct. That has something to do with safe traveling. I remember that. But again, they've combined it with something else. I'm circling this exhibit on the right side, near the second one from the bottom, and it says strength. Do you see that? I do. That to me looks fairly similar to the stick formation on that body. Would you agree that there are some similarities? I can see that there is some similarity, yes. And so I understand that's just one of these, you call them bind runes? Bind runes, I would say that's what these are. These are different than the standard set of runes that I normally see when I look them up. Okay, it's also been brought to my attention during this case that there might be some association. Let me mark this as Defendant's Exhibit Number 2. But some association with triangles in the Odinistic belief system. Do those look familiar to you, those triangles? Yes, sir, they do. Did you also discover the same information that suggests that these triangles, these triple triangles that are interconnected, were part of the Odinistic type? I've seen these in tattoos or on amulets. I'm not sure what they mean. Okay, you said on ambulance? Amulet, like a necklace. I've not actually heard that word before. It's been a good day then. On a necklace, pendant, or whatever. Okay. I have seen this shape associated with some of the runes and stuff before, but again, I'm not sure what the actual meaning of this is. Okay, but you've seen those things together, the rune-type formations and these triangles? I have, sir. You generally agree with me they appear to be associated? I would say there's some association there. Okay, but I'm not sure what it would be. It just happens that Defendant's Exhibit L has 3 of those triangles on it. I actually wasn't paying a lot of attention to that, but do you agree with me that there's similar formation at the bottom of Defendant's L? Yes. It says Valknut. Do you or have you discovered in the course of your research, I'm gonna say, that horns are also a part of this belief system? By horns, like Viking horns, or like the drinking or blowing horns. Well, any kind of horns, frankly. I'm not talking about car horns. We're talking about horns on animals or, depictions of Vikings, things of that nature. I remember at the event where Brian James and his friends were at, there were some people that had. They appeared to be cow horns, stuffed in a holder on their belt. Not all of them, but a few of them. It looked like they had been used for drinking cups or something like that. Did you discover any other association between horns and this Odinism during your research or your experiences? I did not, but I've never looked for it. Did you at any time communicate with the Chief of Police of Beverly Shores? No, sir. That doesn't sound familiar? Not at all. Is that an Indiana town? Presumably yes. No, I have not, sir. Did anybody ever share with you any kind of slideshows or any other kind of organized information regarding Odinism? No, sir. As a part of this investigation? No, sir. Earlier we were talking about, I think I used the phrase good and evil. Let me hand you what's been marked as 3. Again, I just did this on my internet searches. It's not any high-end FBI stuff here. Would you agree with me that that 3 represents the kind of runes we've been talking about today, in one form or the other? I would agree that I'm familiar with the top 3 rows. I'm not familiar at all with any of these on the bottom. The bottom row? Oh, okay, yeah. I've seen the top rows before in various forms. But I haven't seen these before. You mean as you sit here today, you can distinguish between the ones you've seen and the ones you haven't in the past? Okay. Good. And again, each of these may be drawn a little bit differently, but they're put. These are normally divided by 3, and this is the first line, second line, and third line. Again, I have no idea what that fourth line might be. When I was doing this search, and my own research, frankly, obviously the things that jumped out at me, other than the runes themselves, were the comments here. Do you see all these comments? I do. And they're clearly associated with whoever made this clearly is in some ways communicating about supremacist groups, right? It would appear so, sir. So this is consistent with the with I guess what I would call the evil side of this Odinism that you talked about earlier, right? It would be consistent with one side of it, yes. Let me hand you what's been marked as Exhibit J. Just take a look at that. All right, so if I represented to you, or I am representing to you that the side-by-side images, the left image is an image that was taken off of Brad Holder's website or Facebook page, who's a suspect in this case, or was. Do you have any reason to disbelieve that? No, sir. The name Holder actually appears on the picture. Yeah, I saw that. So then on the right, the image on the right is kind of the, maybe not so clear image of what was otherwise Exhibit I. Do you generally agree those are one and the same, just different lighting? They appear to be. All right, so as you look at those, just, with your background knowledge that you have, do you see similarities between those side-by-sides? I see an upright stave and 2 horizontals coming out. I mean, so there's 3 lines on each one, and they're all in a similar position, right? Correct. So there's some similarities in that respect. That's correct. I understand you don't have any context for where that photo, when it was taken, where it came from, and all that. None, sir. But just at first glance, is it obvious that those 2 things seem similar? There are some similarities. Yes. Let me hand you what's been marked as K and L. Take a look at those 2 images if you would, and let me know when you've looked at them. I've looked at them. Have you ever seen those before? Nay, sir. Okay. They're obviously just paintings or some type of, artistic creation of a body hanging upside down. Do you agree with that? Yes, sir. Okay, and if I just told you that those were pulled from the same suspect's website or Facebook page that we referenced on the side-by-side earlier, would you have any reason to disbelieve that? I would not. It even says Brad up here at the top. Okay, so which exhibit are you pointing to? K. All right. So in looking at those, I'm more interested in the mark at the bottom center. Do you see that mark there, in the red mark that exists? I do, and I know it's a little difficult to see, but would you agree with me that that also is very similar to the mark that's on the tree in Exhibit I? Similar formation? I would not. You disagree with that? I do. Okay, tell me why. You still have the same central stave, but on this one they point up, on this one they point down, which is a difference in, this would be a different rune. I'd have to look it up, but it starts with A. Okay, but it's not the same representation. If we're looking at strictly rune formations, that is not the same as that. Okay, fair. Let's start with that. So do you agree with me that it appears to be a rune formation? It very well could be, yes. And then if I hand you Defendant's Exhibit number 2, which we looked at earlier, again, these are just things I pulled off the internet. Would you agree with me that there are other, what I'm going to loosely refer to as F formations, letter F formations, that are similar to the one in Exhibit L? Yes, so may not be the exact same one on the tree, but it appears to be a formation that's recognized in this particular Odinistic alphabet, or whatever we want to call it, right? Yes, sir. Okay, all right. Let me get back to this Brian James thing, because I'm kind of interested. Yes, sir. Is there any geographic area in the state where any of these people that you dealt with, the Brian James Web, are located? I can only go off what I knew when I was looking into them, and I believe that some of that has changed over the years. The American Guard was the group that we were looking into. That actually had officers in several states and different groups. But again, they were centered here in Indiana. Brian lived in Danville, Indiana. Since we looked into him back then, he's gone through a divorce. I don't know if he still lives there. They pretty well erased all of their open source social media, so we don't have the easy access to look to see where they might be now. I don't know if the out-of-state chapters are still even up and running. Anywhere else in the state that you're familiar with that pockets of these groups might exist? I don't know the answer to your question. Usually, when they had gatherings or events, they were always at Brian's house, so I don't know where else they might have been throughout the state, sir. Did you know them to be involved with any kind of ritualistic activities when they did have gatherings or events? I don't know what they were doing. I know at one point they were having a barbecue for many people that attended the Second Amendment rally. I did not attend. All right. You don't know anything else in terms of ritualistic activities? No. We've driven past there when Brian's had gatherings, but there's a fence around the backyard. We couldn't. I have no idea what was going on behind there. I had another question and it escaped my mind, so just give me a minute. May I revisit something? Sure. You asked about horns earlier. Yes. At one point, there were pictures on open-source social media of Brian James and several of the people at the event drinking from a horn. But I'm not sure what significance that has. In your independent research, did you ever find any connection between Odinism and horns? Not that I know of, but again, I've never researched that aspect of it, sir. Although now I'm curious. I'm going to take a break for a second. Sure, there's still another question lingering, but I'm going to talk to Andy, and maybe that'll help me. A recess was taken. We're back on the record. Just a few more things here. So let me hand you what's been marked as C. This is another Defendant's Exhibit C, or Deposition Exhibit C. It's another photograph that's been circulating in this case. Does that look familiar at all? No, sir. Okay. And if I told you that that's one of the crime scene photos of one of the girls, do you have any reason to disbelieve that? Just kind of a close-up? I do not, sir. Just directing your attention, obviously, to kind of the top part of her hair there, above her hair. Do you see those sticks, or whatever you want to call them, that are kind of protruding from her head? Two of them? These? Yeah. One of them is kind of moving from right to left in a more horizontal position. The other one is a little more vertical, coming from the left side? Yes, sir. In looking at those, this isn't a test, but in looking at those, would you generally agree that at least one of those appears to have been placed there? Yes, sir. Specifically, the one that's moving from the right to the left? I'm not sure which one. Yeah, that one. This one appears to be, since it looks like it's on top of the hair, yes, sir. We've all kind of caught on to this, but I want to make sure that you... Yeah. So would you agree with me generally that it appears that it either landed there, or was placed there, or it ended up there at some point after she was there? Correct. Do those two sticks, if you will, appear to be in the formation or loose formulation of horns to you of any kind? I can't speak to that. I don't know. You mean like devil-type horns? Yeah. Antlers? Anything like that? Sir, I couldn't speak to that. Let me hand you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit D. Let me just purport to you that that's a piece of artwork that was pulled offline as it relates to this Odinistic culture. Would you have any reason to disbelieve that? I would not, sir. Okay. And so you see there's some horns on the photograph? I do. I mean, I understand the photos I showed you previously aren't deer horns, but you see what I'm talking about? Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Are you seeing some similarities between those two circumstances? I can see where you can draw that conclusion, but again, I can't speak with any authority as to whether they're representative or not, sir. So it's conceivable that somebody could draw that conclusion? Yes. Let me hand you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit F, and just take a look at that, and then I'll fill you in on what that is. Okay, sir. If I told you that that was an image that was taken from Brad Holder's Facebook page at some point around the time of this crime, would you have any reason to generally disbelieve that? I understand you didn't take it. No. I believe what you're telling me is true. Okay. And do you see in that particular photograph, is there anything that kind of jumps out to you immediately about that photograph as it pertains to this circumstance that we're here on today? The thing that strikes me most is that the leg is stuck up through the tree, and the other one is trapped under it. Okay, so kind of the formation of the body, if you will, or the position of the legs. A bit, yes. Okay, does the fact that that tree is a part of the photo, does that seem unusual or odd to you in any way? Not having been at the scene, I can't say for sure, but I would say it would not be what I would expect to find, simply because of the position of the body and the tree. Let me hand you what was previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit J. Just take a look at that. And if I just purported to you that one of those side-by-sides is a photo from the crime scene, one of the girls, and then the other one is obviously a portion taken from that exhibit that I just handed you with the tree and the body. Does that look consistent? Yes. Please explain that again. So I'm just purporting to you that. I'm trying to look at my letters because these are far away. But Defendant's Exhibit J, J and F, contains a side-by-side. Agreed? Yes. And that the image on the right is really just a slightly different. The color is a little different. But it's the same image as F, correct? Would you generally agree with that? Yes, sir. It's just cut and pasted, basically. Yes, sir. And then I'm telling you that on J, the left image is the image of one of the bodies that was found in this case. Okay, sir. Do you have any reason to disbelieve that? I do not. If you look at those two side by side, are there any striking similarities that you see between the two? Left arm outstretched and bent slightly, and trees put on what appears to be after, post-mortem. Okay, so at the very least, just in terms of body position, the upper portion of the bodies are similar, right? The way they're positioned? Especially on the left arm. Yes, sir. And then with regard to the sticks on one and the tree on the other, there's just some general similarities because there's logs and sticks laying on these people, right? True. Yes. Okay. So now that you've looked at this, if you were part of this investigation, hypothetically, would that raise some concerns with you, knowing that one of the suspects had this on his webpage, on his Facebook page? I believe so, yes sir. Now let's start to put that in context with all of these other exhibits that we've looked at, right? Okay, exhibits of the tree, exhibits of the runes, exhibits involving the artwork, exhibits involving the horns. Kind of piecing all those things together. Are these the types of things that would have caused you some real concern if you would have been involved in this investigation? Can you rephrase causing me concern? Yeah. Does the totality of all of these things concern you that there needs to be some further investigation if you were involved in this? I believe so, yes sir. So any of these things individually don't mean a lot, right? But when you start putting them together, the totality of them means quite a bit more, does it not? As it usually does in any investigation. Yes, sir. And that's what normal police. And again, I'm not a homicide investigator, but they would give me pause for concern to pursue these avenues. You also have common sense, right? Yep. You don't need to be a homicide investigator to draw any conclusions about the similarities here, do you? No, sir. I don't have any further questions. Redirect examination. I want to add to that totality. I'm Andy Baldwin for the record. I'm going to hand you what was marked in a previous deposition as H, but also 4 is the new one. And it's very similar. Yes, sir. Okay, and so now we add that layer to the Brad Holder interest in Brad Holder. Would you be interested? You know, you do undercover work, it sounds like. Do you ever infiltrate these hate groups? It sounds like at least on that march you kind of... We will on an as-needed basis. Typically it's directed at one person within the group, but yes, we do sometimes. I'm just going to ask this. If you were thinking, after we've given you this, and we haven't given you everything, but if we gave you just that much, would you say, hey, maybe we should infiltrate Brad Holder's Pagan Odin group and see if we can get him to talk? Would that be a thought of something to do, or is that too dangerous? Without knowing more about Holder and his group, I can't answer the danger part of that. Okay, I think that looking at these two images, though, it's definitely worth exploring. I've talked to Brian James, too, and he was friends with Holder and Patrick Westfall. I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm not sure that it adds to it. I mean, I don't know of any way that Brian is implicated. In this, I will say that obviously they do share some commonalities in their belief systems, and I don't think Brian had anything to do with it either. I'm going to hand you what was previously marked as S. That is Patrick Westfall, who is Brian Holder's friend, and there's reports that they had a falling out over something that happened in a forest by a river, because of a problem with a ritual that went bad. Huh. Okay. Patrick Westfall and there's evidence of that in police reports, or in reports that we've been provided in discovery. So that's who Patrick Westphal. He and Holder were together, and then because of something happened in a ritual, they're no longer together. But at that time, they were together. Does that? You saw the Abbey rune. You were really astute to notice that it had been cut off, or it looks like it had been cut off. Now seeing that Patrick Westphal there is cutting what looked to be, I think it's a tree branch, into runes, and Holder's commenting on that, is that another layer that would cause you to be curious enough to like, we need to look into this Brad Holder person? I think it would cause me to want to look into Westphal, Patrick Westphal. I would look into him. What he's doing here isn't particularly heinous. What they do is they'll cut like wafers off, and then they carve the rune in them and make a set of 18 or 24 or L6, whatever they want. But I think it bears investigation, probably into both of them, at least to look at, re-question, especially since they've had a falling out, perhaps re-interview. Sure. And when you said both of them, you're referring to Patrick Westphal and Brad Holder? That's correct. Would it be appropriate if there was enough evidence out there to support a search warrant? Would that be a wise thing to do, to go to a judge, because there's missing clothing that might be from the scene that might have been like potentially a hoggle rune? Could be, yes. Which is hail. One of the meanings of it is hail. Was the rune you were talking about earlier that you say something that starts with an A? Was it by chance Ansuz? Stand by. Okay, stand by. A-N-S-U-Z, Ansuz, right. A-N-S-U-Z is what I have, but there might be other spellings. Earlier, you had said about an Ansuz rune, right. That's the one that appears on the artwork. Okay, at the bottom of the tree it appears to be this rune more than the Fehu rune. Okay, because of the way the staves point down as opposed to up. Was that the one you were trying to remember? Yes, I knew it started with an A. I didn't remember the name of it. Only a few more questions. Have you ever heard of a guy named Johnny Messer, in terms when you've been dealing with these? No, sir. Elvis Fields. Have you heard that name before? I heard someone mention Elvis, but I have no idea who Elvis or Elvis Fields is, or his relation to this. Rod Abrams. Have you heard that name before? No, sir. Did you ever tell Purdy that you practiced Odinism? I haven't practiced it, but I know a lot about it. Okay, did you ever tell, I think you answered this already. Did you ever tell Purdy or anyone else that something to the effect that there are good, perhaps good Odinites and bad Odinites? Probably. I'm sorry that I'm standing. It's what I do in court. I'm not trying to lord over you. I'm sitting all the time here. Did you ever present any of your, to a larger group of people, hey, I'm familiar to some degree with this Odin stuff. I'm gonna kind of do a little presentation, so you guys kind of know generally what it is? No, sir. Nobody ever asked. Do you know Trooper Kevin Murphy? I know who he is from. He came through recruit school. Oh, okay. I've never worked with him. No. I think, I could be wrong, but I think in his deposition he thought that you had put on a little talk about Odin, and he was there when it happened. Then he's mistaken. Okay. I've never done anything like that, sir. Okay, would it be fair to say that if there's anybody in the state police ranks throughout the state that knows about Odinism in terms of, let me rephrase that, is there anybody that you know of in the state police ranks that knows more about Odinism than you do? Not that I'm aware of, sir. So could it be said that you're kind of the go-to Odin guy in the state police? I don't know that I would phrase it that way. When we were downtown pre-COVID, anytime there were runes, specifically that were brought up in a case, or needed to be identified, like from a tattoo or something, usually they brought it to my desk and asked my opinion of it. Okay, I mean, I gotta tell you that being on Brad Holder's webpage, whatever that number is, I have it as F, that disturbs me. Does that disturb you? Several of the pictures you've shown me this morning are disturbing, but yes, that one is. That's all I have. Redirect examination. Did you ever hang out with this cast of characters anywhere else other than at the State House? I don't know that I asked you that. You said you didn't go to the barbecue. I've been to a couple of events where Brian James and his people, his followers, were there, but they've all been at large public gatherings, like the Second Amendment rally at the State House. I don't recall any off-site or any other venues that I had any interaction with him. It used to be easy to keep track of them. They were on social media constantly. Do you think that there's a reason why they're not? I have no idea, sir. I mean, were they drawing too much attention at one point? Is that the impression you got? No idea. They were there one day and they were gone the next, and it wasn't just Brian. It was across the board. Do you know about what time frame this occurred? Probably around 2020, maybe a little before. But they used to have videos up of them boxing in the park and all kinds of things, and all that's gone. But you're not able to source or figure out what the reason why they pulled themselves. No, sir. I don't have anything further. You want to review and sign. Hold on. I have a few questions. Okay. Well, what? We're just in a little bit of a trend where you haven't had questions. Cross-examination. Trooper Portwood, have you done any formal training on Odinism besides the Google searches that you've done? No, sir. Have you talked to any BAU units, behavioral analysis units, about Odinism and the signs that are surrounded with Odinism? I have not. So, my understanding is the extent that you have in your knowledge of runes and Odinism is just through stuff you've done on the internet, whether it's Google or searches in other, search databases on the internet? Yes, sir. Okay. And safe to say some of the people that we went through, they've asked if you know Trooper Murphy. You know of him. You just know of him because you went to the academy with him. I probably taught his class at the academy. Taught his class. Okay. But as far as, I don't know him. But you haven't stayed in touch with him after that? I have not. Safe to say that you haven't stayed in touch with the majority of people that went through the ISP Academy? If I don't work with them on a regular basis, no, I haven't. How many do you work with on a regular basis? 20 or less. And do you know how many ISP officers are throughout the state? I believe probably around 1,200. And so if other ISP officers are experts in Odinism or runes, you may not know that? That's very true. And so to say you're the foremost expert or the foremost ISP officer who deals with Odinism and runes is probably not a fair assessment. Probably not. And all these pictures that the defense has shown you today, they've told you what these pictures are, is that correct? Yes, sir. And you've never seen, with the exception of maybe one, which is commonly referred to as the F tree, you've never seen these pictures before? I have not, sir. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Redirect examination. So you told me today that part of your background knowledge is things you found on the internet, right? Yes, sir. But you also told me that you're hanging out with these people, right? At these rallies? I have, yes. I mean, you've been in their airspace. Yes, sir. And so you've been able to marry or kind of associate the things that you learned online with activities that are going on with these people, right? Similarities between them? Yes, sir. So this isn't just all about internet research. This is about you going out and corroborating some of the things that you learned online by engaging with these people. It would actually have been the other way. I engaged with these people and noticed their symbols and tattoos and things like that, and then did more of the research on it, sir. Okay, Mr. McClelland asked you about other people in the state police that might be experts in this particular line or this particular subject matter. Do you recall that question or questions? I do. Are you aware as anybody else? I am not. As you sit here today, and you work, forgive me, but I kind of loosely see your office as kind of like the hub for all things underground in the state police. Is that kind of a fair assessment? I'm not sure I would use those same words to describe it, but yeah, it's close. There's a lot of clandestine stuff going on that comes out of your unit, right? We have classified and unclassified information. Hate crimes, white supremacist groups, extremist groups, that's all part of your gig, so to speak. Yes, sir. Which is all of what we're talking about today. Most of it, yes. So you're in the know, so to speak, when it comes to that kind of stuff? I've had some experience, sir. How long have you been down working in this particular office? Since 2013. Late 2013. I don't have anything else. Review? Are you finished? No, not yet. Recross-examination. Mr. Razi implies that you've been to different events and hung out with these people. I thought your testimony was that you only went to one event that was down in Indianapolis, perhaps at the Capitol House. We've been down there on more than one occasion to interact with Brian James. You specifically? Me, yes. There was only one where they provided security at, and that was the first one. So how many times have you been down? When you interacted with Brian James, was it just Brian James or several people? I've spoken to him directly in a covert capacity, but most of the time it was with a lot of other people around. How many times do you think you did that? 3 that I can recall, sir. Okay, if I misheard, correct me, but you never went to any of the events at his house or anything like that? I did not, sir. You never went to, besides the 3 you talked about, you never went to any other Odinism events. I did not, sir. I don't have any other questions. I do. One just popped up. Redirect examination. How much time do you think you spent looking at internet activity for these people? Just give me an estimate. 75 hours. I don't have anything further. Finished? Yes. Do you want to review and sign to make sure that she typed this up accurately, or do you trust that she's going to do that and you can waive signature? Either one. What would you suggest, sir? It's really up to you. If you want to verify that everything is correct in what she has typed, then it would be good for you to look at it and sign it. It's kind of up to you. Again, I would like to verify it. I think that's a good idea.